Hi there guys, I thought what I really needed to do was make a quick video for you guys. I've got a few comments from students saying they're not quite sure how to do the writing. They might enjoy the scenes and and get some ideas from them, but they're not really sure where their next step is in terms of the writing. So I'm just going to quickly explain these steps and what it is that we're really trying to get to. So the first thing is I'll just watch this clip with you guys really quick, this one of Los Angeles. You've probably already watched it before, but as I'm watching it, I'm just going to have a quick chat about some of the things that I'm noticing as we go. Thanks, Queen. Alright. So we've got Los Angeles here, you can see that. Alright, so it's looking at Chris's eyes and he's looking up. Big city. But now this look on his face, he doesn't look super impressed, does he? He's walking around. It's all very busy.
I need your consent on a few items.
Hi, do you have the time? Time? Yeah. Okay.
All very busy, all hustle and bustle. Listen to those noises, the honking. Now we see the cameras sort of slowly moving along this line of people that are homeless. They're looking for a place to sleep that night.
They don't pay though. They don't pay. Yeah, that'd be cop for me, that's all.
So as I'm watching this, I'm trying to think of, well, what's the film trying to say about society and about the city? Having a look at these shots here, it's all sort of blurring and freezing, and it's all really, it's a bit much for Chris, I think. We've got this gorgeous big city, apartments, all looking very flash, and then down below it, we've got poor people just trying to live their lives. Another close-up of Chris here while the city just rushes around him and it's all busy and it's hustle-bustle, right? Alright, so I'll stop that video there. So some of the things, if we're just looking at what's this big idea, and remember the question that you're asked in the PowerPoint is, well, what's it trying to say about society versus nature or the wild? We know that he's had a gorgeous time wandering around in nature, paddling down rapids and, climbing trees and looking at deer and just climbing mountains and just having a beautiful time connecting with himself and nature. But he has to duck back into society for a moment, and this is his experience of it. So what do you think the movie's trying to say about society, or what at least does Chris feel about society? So what I do in my table here in my Word doc, as you guys would be doing, is I might just put a really brief note. I might just say, the film shows us that society is what? There's a lot of cool things that we could pick up from this film, but you might just say that society is really, let's say, it's all about maybe being selfish or busy and it's fast, yeah? So maybe that society is a bad place that's loud and fast and no one cares about each other. Right? So we've got all these homeless people wandering the streets, but we've also got this, it's a really wealthy city, right? Enormous sky-rise, gorgeous glass apartments hanging up in the air, but we know that there's people down on the street doing it tough and no one really cares about them. They just walk past and pretend that they don't exist. So here I've written, the film shows us that society is a bad place that's loud, fast, and no one cares about each other. I'll pop a comma in there. Whoops. Loud, fast, and no one cares about each other. Alright, so I've picked a specific scene already. I want to talk about the scene where Chris visits Los Angeles. That's the one that I'm looking at. All right. Later on, I might change that slightly so that it makes a sentence, right? But so we've got our big idea. The film shows us the society's a bad place, too loud, too fast, and no one cares about each other. We're going to look at this specific scene of Chris in Los Angeles, and in that scene, now I want to pick it apart and say, well, what are some of the little things that it shows, and how does the camera, or maybe the sound effects and things like that, how does that actually create that meaning? How does that actually present that message? So maybe we could just do it bit by bit. Let's just think about, what does the camera show? What does the camera show us? We might say that it starts out showing, it's looking up at beautiful, wealthy apartments, aren't they? They're looking pretty flash. Beautiful, wealthy apartments. But in contrast to this, the camera also moves along a line of homeless people, or moves throughout the streets. That's another thing that the camera does, to show the opposition to all of this wealth. We've also got all of this poverty, right? So we've got the camera, it pans if it's moving sideways like that, or it can even track. Pans/tracks sideways along a line of homeless men, because I think they were all men in that line. So there's two examples of how the camera's showing us that. We could also do one more if we wanted to say, well, what does Chris really think about this? We could say that towards the end, have a look at this shot here, if you don't remember it. We've got Chris sitting on the bridge by himself. Ready? So he's just going to sit on the side of this bridge. We're looking at his face. He seems very unimpressed, pretty sad by it all, right? And everything's just rushing past. So the camera shows a close-up, might even be an extreme close-up. An extreme close-up of Chris's, what expression would you call it? Maybe unimpressed or unsatisfied, maybe, or disappointed. Disappointed expression while cars and lights rush past in the background. Right, so that's what's going on there. So cars and lights rush past in the background. So we've already listed 3 specific techniques or things that the camera shows us that we could easily talk about. So I don't want to write too much more. I don't want to overcomplicate it, but I do just want to write maybe a little bit on the sound itself, okay? Because at some point, I'll just say there's lots of beeping, cars whooshing, and just the hustle and bustle background noises. There's sirens as well. Yeah, so these are just my notes. They don't have to look pretty. So, just having watched that scene, I've decided that, well, the film's showing us that society, or at least the cities, yeah, and how people treat each other is pretty crappy, right? So the film shows us that society is a bad place that's loud, fast, and no one cares about each other. And we've got a good example of this is in the scene with Los Angeles, okay? And now I can break apart that scene. What we want to do in our paragraph is analyze or break down all the little things that make that scene say that thing that we think it's saying, okay? That big idea. So our table here is pretty fantastic. We've got our what, we've got our when, and we've got our how. Now, if we wanted to turn this all into a paragraph of its own, I might put it side by side. All right. Remember, we've got all of our fancy sentence starters. If you look back to the lesson from last week, so the writing lesson, film analysis, some sentence starters could have included, you know, into the wild shows us that, ... right? Or we could just say the film shows us that, yeah? I'm just going to copy the one that I've already written because that's pretty good, or I'll just say shows us that, there we go, society is a bad place, because I've already written it pretty well and it flows as a sentence. So when you pop that in there, just make sure that it flows as a sentence and makes sense. So into the wild shows us that society is a bad place. that's loud, fast, and no one cares about each other. I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see that. Alright, and no one cares about each other. So that's our big idea, that's our what. Alright, and next step is to go, well, okay, I've said that here's a big idea. Where do we actually see that in the film? So I could give a lot of different scene examples. We could talk about the bar. We could talk about when his parents try to buy him a car and think that that makes you happy, just buying more things and things. But we just want to focus today on this example with Chris in Los Angeles. So I might say a good example of this is when, right, and you could say is the scene where where Chris visits Los Angeles. You could write it a different way. You could say this is shown when Chris visits Los Angeles. Okay. Now we've got our big idea, our what, and then we've got our when. We've got our specific scene that we're going to talk about. Now we're trying to keep it simple here, but now we're going to write about our how. So big idea, specific scene. Now let's break apart that scene. Let's talk about some of these cool things that we looked at here from that scene. So we might say, this is shown when Chris visits Los Angeles. So I'll just write out loud as we go. So I'm thinking, well, when he enters Los Angeles, what's he seeing? Yeah. So when he enters LA, the camera shows him looking up at all of the enormous, whoop, way to spell enormous, right? Enormous and wealthy apartment buildings. Yep, and they're gorgeous, okay? Then the camera, whoops, pans and shows a line of homeless men down on the streets below. So there's a reason they do that. They keep looking up at these gorgeous apartments and these fancy buildings and then look down, looking at all of the homeless men. Okay, so it's trying to show that difference in that society, that you can have such amazing wealth, but also such massive poverty going on at the same time. So I've said, when he enters LA, the camera shows him looking up at all the enormous and wealthy apartment buildings. Then the camera pans and shows a line of homeless men down on the streets below. Now, I've got a couple of good things there. If I wanted to just end my paragraph there, I could. You're certainly welcome to. But having a look at this scene from LA, we did come up with a few more things. So we might introduce a few more ideas or a few more techniques if we wanted to. I might just put in this example of the camera here. Just before Chris leaves LA, he is shown, or we might say, there is an extreme close-up. So we want to be using our film language that we know about, our terminology. There is an extreme close-up of Chris's, what did I say? Disappointed expression is what I said. Disappointed expression. So he's kind of disappointed in LA and how everyone's treated. Oops. Oh, wow. Who's your English teacher? Disappointed. D-I-S-A-P-P. There we go. Disappointed expression. While cars and lights rush past in the background. Yep. While cars and lights rush past in the background. Fantastic. Now, I could end it there, as I said, but I really am interested in these sounds as well. I might even put it in just before Chris leaves, so that the scene makes a little bit more sense. So I'm talking about the camera and the homeless people. I might pop it in here before Chris leaves, and I might say the film includes sound effects of beeping cars, wailing sirens, because that's the noise that a like ambulance makes, like it wails, it screams, right? Wailing sirens, and the busyness of the streets. Yeah. I might say the loud busyness of the streets. Just before Chris leaves LA, there is an extreme close-up of Chris's disappointed expression while cars and lights rush past in the background. See, I've got to constantly do some editing because I keep making a few typos, but that's how writing works. That's the process. So this is a pretty good paragraph so far. All right, we've got our what, so our big idea. I'm going to put that in, what color should I make that? Let's go big and red. All right, this is shown when ... So just introducing our when. This is our big scene. I'll put that in dark green. All right, and all of our hows we can put there in blue. Now, we could leave it there. I'm kind of inclined to leave it there, but we might, in the next lesson, talk about a very last sentence that we could add to that, just to sort of tie it all together and show, well, all these things together, what are they really showing? What can we really take away from it? Okay? And so you might even write something like this. This scene goes to show the differences between poverty and wealth within our society. Whoops. Our society. Society, man. Society. Okay. So we could wrap that on at the end just to sort of tie it all up together and connect it back to this big idea of society being a bad place. But you don't have to write that last thing just now. So there you go, guys. There's an example of how we actually do that writing process. Now, if all of this is a little bit sounding like I don't even know where to start. What's with this close-ups, all that sort of stuff? That probably means you need to do the lesson from week 4. So it was called 402, I think. What did we call it? 401, sorry. Eye of the Storyteller. So that was to do with our camera angles and techniques, okay? So that you can get an idea of, well, what are we actually seeing when the camera's looking in a certain way or from a certain distance, okay? So have a go at that lesson first. It's really important that you catch up on that. And then you'll have a chance to look at the lesson from last week and then this week, where we're looking at scenes and having a go at writing our own short paragraphs like this. So, as I said, we could do just 3 sentences if we just wanted to do, one of the hows, but there's lots of things that we could break down. There's lots of little examples that we can find throughout that scene, okay? If you want to really extend yourself, you can even include multiple scenes in that. But right now, let's not break ourselves. Let's just try and keep it short and simple. Okay, all the best, guys. All right, let me know if you still need any help.